Yo, Broken Ronin, I'm gonna have to cut you off, bro. You guys are gonna hate me so hard right now. I didn't record any of my audio for the entire bit. I just noticed. I am so sorry. We're gonna have to redo everything.
That was the most beautiful intro
I'm
of all
so
time.
sorry.
Oh.
I know it was such a good intro. It was such a good intro, and I absolutely ruined it. I am so sorry.
So I don't put any blame on you.
I really didn't. I thought we killed it. I really thought we killed it. All right, I'm just gonna quickly do my part. I'm gonna shut up, and I'm just gonna power on through and pick right back up where Ronin left off. All right. Hi everybody. Welcome back to episode 4. Why do I keep saying that, dude? Every single time I open up this fucking podcast, I keep saying welcome back to episode blank, and I'm like, they haven't started the episode, right? Like, who leaves in the first 10 seconds, comes back, and they're like, whoa, a lot's changed in the last half second, whatever. Hi guys, welcome back to the Honored Ones podcast. This is episode 4. I'm your host Kreams, here with my co-host
Broken Ronin. What's up, guys? Gonna jump into it with a few special things. I guess I'll kind of go over those. So we have a guest on here, Doofy. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yo, what's up, people? It's an absolute honor and pleasure so far to be on the Broken Ronin and Cream Super Special Fun Time Hour podcast style, and I look forward to having a really bad discussion and then regretting it later on.
Yes, sir. So
hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, I mean, we have a guest on here, so that's pretty dope. We also, as YouTubers, also kind of.
Yo, BR, you're gonna have to say that last part again. Your Discord cut out.
All right, hold on. What part?
Is it always like this?
No.
Yep. Every single dude.
Wait.
What the fuck do you think I edit?
True.
It's
What'd
just,
I do?
bro. It's literally all Discord glitches.
So wait, where'd I cut off?
As YouTubers. ...
Oh, okay. Basically, we finally did our job as YouTubers. Actually, on the day we recorded this podcast, I uploaded a video, at least on the day that I'm actually recording the podcast, and Kreams did as well. So give us a round of applause. Thanks.
Yeah, dude. I can't believe we did it. Yeah, I'm personally excited. I started this Bleach video a month ago, and it feels good to finally have it done. It should be up by the Friday that this podcast is up, and that would be ideally the 10th of December. And if you haven't seen that video already, well, obviously, if you're watching this podcast, if you're one of those well-hung Giga Chads that watch our podcast the same day it drops, we thank you, we appreciate you. Don't tell the others, but you're our favorites. Anyway, watch that video on my channel the next day. Let's just get right into this shit. BR was talking about how he thought that My Hero Academia had a better chapter than Jujutsu Kaisen, and said Gege Akutami's life was absolutely mid.
Don't like that. Yeah, but both had great chapters. JJK and My Hero, I honestly don't have a lot to complain about. Like, I could just sit here and fanboy over Megumi, which I already did on Twitter, honestly. But yeah.
Well, do it again.
I mean, it was
this
great.
Content,
it was great,
Ronin.
Right? Great chapter. I think Kenjaku's being built up quite a bit, so I enjoyed that. Megumi did his thing, beating ass, as he should. The My Hero Academia chapter was good as well. We got a little bit, a hint of how our main trio is progressing. Bakugo, Deku, whatever. Yeah, they're all.
Which is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
If you guys listened to last week's podcast, that's literally exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, and then we kind of the more body of the chapter was focusing on a little reveal that was is foreshadow the right word? Whatever. We saw a little bit of it last chapter. People freaked out. I obviously, in my all-knowing omniscience, didn't.
Oh my god!
And trusted Horikoshi, and guess what? It paid off. Horikoshi did not miss this week, so I'm happy about that.
So am I, man. I always love it when Horikoshi actually goes back to his roots and remembers that he's a good writer. It's my favorite feeling in the world, and I'll admit he had me worried there for a second, or 2 months. Same thing, really.
Yeah.
Are we getting into spoilers?
No, not this week.
No. Oh, right, because we have here.
Hey, has a name. Thank you very much, bro.
But yeah, I mean,
feel free to spoil the fuck out of MHA. I will never read that dog for the rest of my life. JJK, however, has a special place in my heart, and I will be reading the last 3 chapters together, probably later this week. I just like to save them up. You know what I mean?
Worry,
having only 18 pages of JJK a week it's criminal. You know what I mean? I gotta save some of that shit up.
Yeah.
Really.
And Akutami does be taking 1 week breaks at a drop of a hat sometimes.
Yeah,
he should.
Yeah, I mean, he pumping out bangers, and if he doesn't get sick like he did last time again, whatever. Go do your thing, Akutami. But
yeah,
in any case, Both good chapters this week. I mean, usually now if the chapters were bad, I probably would have dove into them more. But like, I genuinely just don't have much to complain about. I'm excited to see, honestly, both of them. Like those storylines progress. Megumi doing his thing, and I'm interested in seeing how Deku handles this new news that he was just confronted with.
Wait, real quick, a little bit of an interjection here. Okay. To both of you, but I don't know how familiar you are with Naruto, Kreams. Okay, I know. Leave it to Doofy to bring back the Naruto. But on Twitter right now, there's a whole debate going on about Sauske versus Megumi, and I just wanted to know, Ronin, where you stand on this, because I know you think rather highly of both. Just overall, like, which you like better, who you think is better written, whatever.
So, listen. So I just want to preface this by saying both of them are really good. That's an understatement for me, but Sauske mops the floor with Megumi in a way that's
fucking very disrespectful.
Because Sauske is like one of the best. Sauske is one of the best characters ever. Like, you pit Sauske up against most of a character I can think of, like they're getting washed. So it's not anything against Megumi. He's literally my favorite character in JJK, but he's not touching Sauske, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, because it's difficult to tell, because I've already pinned you as like the JJK guy. So I just assume that you have every JJK character at the absolute highest of pinnacles. But then you surprised me, I guess, last week when you mentioned that Sauske is like top 4 characters for you. So this debate just seemed like something I wanted to really know what you thought. But yeah, I mean, I also fall in the same place as you. But Kreams, are you in any position to answer the question as well?
Nah, dude, I don't watch mid shows or below mid.
Bro, you're literally reading My Hero Academia right now, okay? So I don't want to hear nothing.
Bro, I'm taking this from a guy that couldn't handle 3 chapters of One Punch Man. Doofy, it's not my fault you can't read.
I'm 25 chapters in. My shit ain't changed. It's still dog.
Oh my god. All right. See,
it's dog.
It's so crazy how both y'all can just hit and miss like simultaneously. Y'all just one time Doofy goes off on Naruto, yes, and then he says One Punch Man's after. I'm like, God, all right. And then Kreams over here doesn't like Naruto. Oh man, I guess I'm the only one that's spitting on the podcast. But yeah, to answer your question, Sauske is way better. Sauske is better than most. Well, that's a lot to say. I was gonna say Sauske is better than the series, but I don't know if I say that like alone. But he's definitely better than each individual character in JJK.
Fair.
All right, so I want to like give BR. I want to give our scores for the chapters just to kind of keep it moving. Timestamp me doesn't fucking like kill somebody. So final scores for the My Hero Academia chapter and JJK chapter. Let me just go first. First off, for the JJK chapter, honestly, I give it an 8 out of 10. My Hero chapter, also 8 out of 10.
Okay. For JJK, it's gonna get a solid 10 from me. I don't have any complaints. I like how it built up Kenjaku.
None?
No complaints. I mean, I guess the only complaint would be that it wasn't longer, but that's a complaint of the format of chapters.
Yeah.
Not like of the actual chapter. My Hero is probably like an 8. Really good. I'm more excited to see what happens next, though.
Bro, I can't believe you gave that chapter. You've been giving all these chapters like 10s and shit, man. I don't know how Geg is gonna live up to your expectations.
I mean, if it's good, it's good. What you want me to do?
Hey, let bro enjoy it, Kreams. What the fuck's wrong with you?
Nah, dude, I don't like when people enjoy things without my permission. It really freaks me out. It's kind of like I'm quirky like that.
Spoken like a true Hunter x Hunter fan.
All right.
It's hard to be blessed.
Oh my god.
Tell me about it. As a Naruto fan, I know all about that.
Facts.
My god, bro. We get it. You need the audiobook or else you can't read a book. Bro, you gotta stop flexing. Dude, I literally said to Doofy, yo, just because you look like Baby No Money doesn't make you a god. And all it's been doing is getting to his head. He's been on a roll recently. Check his Twitter.
That hot
I don't know what you're trying to say there. You're just saying that I'm doing good. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I am. Like, what about it? Okay, where's the kind of like punch to the nads? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you were setting me up for like a kick in the nuts, but you're literally just I like what you're doing.
I lost half my steam. I literally lost half my steam at the halfway point there. Are you happy, Doofy? Are you fucking happy? Can we just get on to the main fucking topic?
Yeah, I'm happy, bro. Like, Dice had made a community post today, and he's like, yeah, everyone go sub to Doofy. Out of fucking nowhere, I gained like 11 subs. Life is good. I'm almost at 1,000. Of course I'm happy, dog.
I don't know who Dice said is.
Really?
Nah. Is it like a video game person or?
Shake my head.
The name is Dice Head. How is
you
that?
don't know the best Anituber on the platform? That's kind of wild.
That's kind of
Bro, I
disrespectful.
hate you both. This is the shit I'm talking about, dude. It's that fucking meme. It's literally that meme. I'm literally a prophet, dude. I fucking foresaw this in my third eye.
I don't know if you're memeing. Like, do you just not know who Dice Head is?
I don't
Just
know who
an
this is.
Anituber, very cool guy.
So we talked about the chapters, we ranked them. We mentioned that Horikoshi didn't miss. Finally, what next? Podcast leader, Kreams.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. First of all, I want to get into like straight into the main topic because we do have, as much as I hate to say it, a certified, fully realized philosopher king in our midst.
Fucking go,
Doofy
boys,
here. Bro.
That's me.
He literally teaches, people who pay him to pay to listen to him, like how much life is like. It doesn't matter. So, with that spirit in mind, I want to ask you about this DM you got, BR, because you may not have noticed this, but you made me blush like a little schoolgirl when you were like, somebody who listens to the podcast DM me, bro. That's like, wow, this is a surefire way to like turn on my engine.
Okay.
They sent it to me on Twitter. I'll just copy and paste it over here. Boom. That's what happened.
All right, so I'm gonna start reading the quote right now. Bro, just finished listening to the 3 episodes of Your Screams podcast, and I really love that shit. I don't know if the point of it is for you two to debate each other, or if that just so happens, or if that just happens to happen. But was wondering if you'd ever do an episode about your favorite philosophies in anime. Not really huge into Anitube, as I don't really like most of them, but I think you and Kreams are some of the select few that are very well spoken. Thank you. Thank you, super great podcast. I think you guys have a gem here. I do too. I don't know about Broken Ronin, he's kind of a pessimist, but I really like what we're doing with this podcast.
I agree. I am not a pessimist. I would consider myself fairly optimistic, actually. But I will say thank you for the message. I obviously responded to him on Twitter when he sent me this. Yeah. So are we gonna get into favorite philosophies in anime?
Can I ask a clarifying question? I mean, obviously neither of you know since you didn't write the question, but what do you mean philosophies about anime? Like, do you mean philosophies of like your philosophy about reading it, or your?
All right, I'm gonna tell you how I interpreted the question and how I'm gonna answer it, and then you guys can like decide if that's the direction you want to go. So the way I interpreted it was like, what's your favorite anime running theme or something that you just are a complete sucker for every time you see it if it's like executed properly. So the example I had in mind was when things don't go according to plan is like my favorite thing in anime. And what I mean by that is Chimera Ant arc, for example, when you actually watch Hunter x Hunter, wasn't supposed to happen. All that they were supposed to do was just get to Greed Island and then find Jean or Kite, and then from there Kite would like do some kind of training, and then they'd move on to the next step in their journey to finding Jean, and then that would be it, right? But then all of Chimera Ant happened to happen at that same time, kind of derailing the entire like plan for Hunter x Hunter, and it's super interesting because it like gives me the impression, again, this is strictly from my reading, that Hunter x Hunter is, with the Chimera Ant arc, was kind of subtextually saying, sometimes shit happens and it do be what it be, or it is what it is, as the common folk like to say. But that's like the really short version of like how I interpreted that question and my answer. So you guys take it. I will not interrupt.
I'll just chime in really quickly because I don't have nearly as much to say. Although I am fully equipped to actually answer that question as well, I probably interpreted it in a completely different way. In particular, I just thought they were asking about our philosophies about just reading manga or watching anime. You know, how do we approach an anime or manga? How do we rank it? Of course, it's obviously that's the stuff I talk about on my channel. Of course, I'm going to find that in the question. So of course I read it exactly as such. But the idea of like what's philosophies and anime is so vague that I mean it's easy to see how you derived your interpretation, I derived mine, and probably also with Ronin. But I feel like Kreams and I have both kind of different. Oh, really? Completely different than both? Okay, let's hear it though.
Really?
Wow. I really thought that me and Kreams exhausted it, but no, please.
Yeah. No, so if I'm correctly, you basically got what is your philosophy when approach anime. Kreams was kind of like interpretation, like what he liked it. Mine was more of a like, what is the philosophy that a character upholds? Like, what is my favorite depiction of philosophy in anime? So, like, I might come off a little bit obtuse here. I think that's the right word, obtuse here, because I'm not necessarily sure where the differentiation or where like the line is drawn between like an ideal per se versus like a philosophy. But like for example, I thought it was more like, okay, if you compare like Merriam's philosophy of like the chimera ants being like biologically superior versus like Payne's, cycle of hatred, blah blah blah. Kind of utilitarian speech, if you want to say that. That's what I kind of interpreted it as. Like, which one of a character's, even though these anime didn't create these philosophies, like which depiction of a philosophy is your favorite anime? So I think I took a little bit of a tertiary approach to that.
I love that all three of us had completely like different interpretations of a singular
Should
prompt.
we answer all of them to make sure we satisfy
we
the?
can.
You know what I mean?
We're pretty early in the
let's do it.
podcast. Do you want to do it in the order we set them, or in the order of like interest?
So you already answered yours, Kreams. So I think we can go down the line of like, okay, like what is like basically the way I look at it is like, what is a trope we enjoy? I guess like at least that's how my brain kind of rationalizes it. Okay, so basically what we all agreed to do, we're gonna go down each of our interpretations and I'll give our answers. Kreams gave his, kind of going over like the tropes, if you will, that these anime and manga have, and like our favorite ones of that. And Doofy, you can go in and give your second, and I'll kind of go last and wrap everything up, at least for that interpretation.
Yeah, so like following with the idea that there are certain tropes that I'm just like, oh man, when I see them, I'm an absolute child, and I'm just gonna eat up whatever you give me. For me, that has to be the idea of like this kind of like prodigal son who is like ingenious, absolutely brilliant, very talented, yet is received poorly by the public in the sense of like, okay, well, he's technically good, but he doesn't have any soul, he doesn't have no passion. That might seem a little abstract, but there are a few very concrete instances where I think this is very well expressed. For one, Yearline April. Kosei, everyone recognizes, is a brilliant pianist. But like everyone in the audience simultaneously remarks that like it just feels like a robot's playing the song. Like it doesn't actually, like it's impressive technically, but like it just kind of lacks something. Likewise, we see that in Barakamon, where Sei Honda is a calligrapher who is very well renowned for his talents, but unfortunately just isn't able to produce something that is really distinguishing. And so that results in him getting second place. He lashes out at that. And then in both anime, they have their whole journey from, this frustrated genius towards producing something more original. And maybe not at maybe not to sacrifice the kind of ingenious of their work, but like, kind of not just doing something technical for the sake of being technical, but just trying to be yourself and using your genuine skill to produce that. And I think in both cases, we see exactly that. Kosei, performs an amazing work that actually feels like he is playing it and he is in command. Like what Brockman Sei produces like just a beautiful, piece of calligraphy that is, very well received. And so anytime I see that theme, I'm very sympathetic to it. In spring of 2021, there was an anime called Those Snow White Notes. Very similar theme. This time it was with I forget the word now, but it was some kind of musician who was also, again, just like a technical genius. But everyone who heard him was like, wow, that just kind of sounds like your grandfather. Like there's nothing original here. And so they kind of were like, yeah, it's whatever. And so the show, from what I can tell, is just this main character trying to find his own style. I dropped it. I think it wasn't like a particularly good execution of that theme. But I had it like, if you asked anyone who was watching anime with me along that time, like Noob or even Tayo, I spoke very highly of that anime when it first came out because I'm so sympathetic to that theme. But when I just saw it so poorly executed, I just couldn't convince myself to keep watching. So I guess, that's kind of the theme that gets me going more than any other. And I'm very sympathetic too.
That's kind of cool. It's somewhat, I'll say it's somewhat similar in the sense that like, at least with like my favorite theme, like the theme that's just like, kind of like you said, like all common sense, all critical thinking skills are just like, yeah, nah, this is great, this is fire. It's like the like that super genius that's like super tactical in planning. So, like a Light Yagami, Lelouch, like those types of characters. for some reason, just seeing those characters like methodically work through whatever problems they're solving or whatever like kind of goals they're running towards or whatever light, somewhat developing into this god complex type character. Lelouch, obviously doing his thing with his revolt. Ayana Koji from Classroom of the Elite is also a really good example. I don't know what it is. It's honestly hard for me to pinpoint what it is about that type of character, but just something. It's just seeing. I think part of it is like having my expectations consistently subverted by the fact that like you'll think that their plans, they finally messed up, right? They finally got it wrong. They've been caught, whatever, and then you just have that like that super. I don't know how to explain it. That super just like arrogant smile of like the plan finally went through fruition or whatever, and them explaining their plan, breaking it down, and showing you like why this is something you like. I love it when it's not something that's just plot induced stupidity on their opponent's end. Like it's something that you could have technically figured out if you were able to think through it as logically as they were. And I just really like those types of things, like that strategy heavy, super smart, and a lot of times like really emotional characters. I think it's always fun to see them, and it is always funny to not funny, but it's always interesting and sometimes emotional when they do actually mess up or they do fail. Like Lelouch or Light breaking down when their plans don't go correctly and things like that. It's always fun to see those types of characters for me.
Huh. Are you
Yeah.
what do you think of like anime built around that, like Dr. Stone?
So Senku's a little bit different for me. Because typically the type of characters I like are very morally like, at least in that trope, they're morally gray. They're not necessarily good people, right? Light's not necessarily a good person. Lelouch, you can argue, but he's morally corrupt in certain aspects, I think. Ayana Koji is emotionally vacant. Yuichi from Tomodachi Game is literally evil. So Senku's a little bit different because his intelligence doesn't necessarily come from like, at least from where I'm at, a strategic point of view, but more from like a scientific knowledge. It's a little bit of a different type of intelligence, if that makes sense. So Senku's cool, but he doesn't fall. He's not cool for that reason. He falls in. He doesn't fall into that trope for me personally. So like really the best example that's just gonna be the most well known is just Death Note. Like it just falls into that. There are certain series that I think does it better or have done it more interesting for me. But Death Note is, I think, a perfect example to use.
So I have examples. So would a person who embodies this preference be somebody like Mayuri, Aizen, or like Urahara?
Yes, they all fall into that. Aizen
Really?
more so,
Not Urahara.
Than everybody else. No. They do fall into that. Urahara is kind of, but he's less than Mayuri and Aizen. So if I had to rank it based off of like how much they fit into that trope, it's Aizen, Mayuri, then Urahara.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm also surprised.
Yeah.
Bottom?
Well, okay. Let me ask this: Why is it surprising that Urahara's at the bottom? Because to me, that's
Because
just
Urahara
natural.
is
I don't
like
have,
he's
like,
not
a-
exactly morally squeaky clean, right? He's just like his machinations are, when you take a look at it, they're mostly reactionary, but a lot of it is kind of his fault. Like for example, the Hogyoku was like his. Like he was the one that was successful with it, not Aizen, right? Like if he hadn't made it to begin with, then like none of the show would have happened, and Aizen would just be some kind of like really beefy Shinigami that like Kenpachi could fucking take out. Let's be real. So with Urahara, everything that, let's be real, 30% of Bleach is about Urahara's fault. I think that's a good amount of blame to assign him.
It's at least the byproduct of his work. Yeah, I'll definitely agree.
Yeah, so like and like the other half, I'd say like not even the other half. Like I'd say another 30% is him trying to fix it. So they're not exactly squeaky clean actions, like putting the Hogyoku in Rukia's body. Like there's some shady shit there. So like it's not like Urahara is like a tried and true good guy. It's just it's very surprising because he's the most ambiguous of them all, right? Because Mayuri is just kind of a sadist, let's be real, and Aizen's just like a monster.
Yeah. And like even to go back to an earlier claim you made that like you have particular gripes with the protagonist being smart, but it's only because the plot demands that either of those characters be like stupid or whatever. You allude to something like that earlier. I feel like there is simply just a lot of cases where that is exactly what happens with Aizen, where, you know, it was all according to my plan, and you know, and that's just kind of like Kubo's like easy way to explain away like certain stupidities and to kind of like prop up Aizen
I mean,
even more.
he did it
Whereas with
again.
Urahara, like I feel like everything is much more carefully crafted when it comes to Urahara. Like I feel like everything is much more careful and in control, and I feel like there's a much more active effort to have his intellectual successes privileged over other successes, because it is simply the fact that he just outsmarted like another smart guy. Whereas with Aizen, sometimes it's just like, yes, you are all stupid and I am smart, therefore I am good. Like it doesn't have the same force, I feel sometimes.
Me too. And with
Okay,
Mayuri,
so
it's like,
so let me ask this just to clarify. So you both have Mayuri above Urahara in that sense, then, right? Like by that metric,
It's definitely Urahara
no,
for it. So let me give my
the
list,
opposite.
and I think Doofy it'll be the same one from how this conversation's going.
Yes.
It's Urahara, Mayuri, then Aizen.
Whoa, Aizen's the bottom.
Hold on.
Okay, say your
Yes,
piece, but like,
because Aizen's plans, they're set up in a way to not outsmart a person. They're just kind of to get him from point A to point B. And I'll be honest, when he is trying to outsmart or like outmaneuver a person, he's not fantastic at it, right? So he creates Wonderweiss. He goes like that's smart, right? Like to know that he eventually has to make up a contingency for Yamamoto and like Kenpachi, for example. That's like smart. That's what I put in that category. But his execution of it was still like kind of a failure, because Wonderweiss was basically shreked by Yamamoto's fists, you know? Like he was only successful insofar as like Yamamoto managed to like blunt the force of the impact or whatever, and Urahara's intelligence is like next level because he already had a seal planned for like third form butterfly Aizen. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I agree. Urahara. So
like
so don't mistake it. Urahara is definitively smarter than Aizen and Mayuri. That's not like it's not. I
Yeah.
don't think he's less intelligent. I think what the problem. So I guess I can kind of like quantify now that I'm thinking why I think why I prefer Aizen and Mayuri, right? And I think it comes down to like they're smart, high IQ, like five head like quotes or like moments, right? So like one that sticks out for me for Mayuri is like kind of like the perfection speech, right? Where he's like critiquing I think it's Scialopero, another scientist, on his ideology of like reaching perfection, right? That moment in particular is one that really stands out to me. And I think that sort of like that mental like kind of flex where he's not outright, I don't know if you ever calls him dumb or not. I'd have to reread it specifically, but he's basically like the very basis of your like of your, I guess, your ideals is faulty, right? And that's why you lost here, whatever. And then he already has the superhuman drug. So that like I don't think Urahara has a moment like that for me, right? Not like a super like whatever. I think for like Aizen as well, he's like it's pretty cliche, but like when he was like, since when were you under the impression that Kyoka Suigetsu wasn't active or something like that? Like something so blatantly not obvious per se, but it's such a, I guess, like high possibility that realization of like, holy shit, like he's like what is this? He's just a like mentally domineering type of character. Urahara has that, but to me he plays so much more of a background role that I don't enjoy that as much. I don't get to indulge in that intelligence as much as I do with like Mayuri and Aizen, at least for me.
But I'll just make a quick comment, and this will be like the most abstract thing you've ever heard in your life, but because like Kisuke presents himself as like a very goofy, aloof kind of man, anytime he says something significant, it's a stark contrast in his character, and I think that adds a lot more force to what he has to say. No, I agree with you, Ronin. He doesn't have the same, backlog of impressive speeches as, say, Aizen or Mayuri, but I think he has some impressive one-liners, and this is why I'm saying it's abstract. I could not name a single one right now. I only have the recollection of having those experiences watching Bleach. So, take my word with a grain of salt, I suppose. But whenever Kisuke gets serious about something, to me, the force of that, even if it's only a little one line, doesn't have to be a speech, even if it's only a little one line in the background, it has much more force than anything Mayuri's ever said, because Mayuri is only playing his own role throughout the course of the series. Urahara is constantly going back and forth between I'm the goofy mentor, but I'm also like I'm really strong. I have a serious thing to say about this matter right now, and I think that's the difference for me between at least Mayuri and Urahara.
Yeah, and I want to add on to this a little bit, because when you take a look at Aizen's master plan for Ichigo, for example, it was technically like Aizen's master plan for Ichigo was technically a part of Urahara's master plan for Aizen, because he was the one training Ichigo along like all these paths, and he was the one that fucking essentially led to Ichigo being born. He was more responsible for Ichigo's creation than Aizen ever was, and especially when it comes to his development and everything that came after, a lot of it has to do with Urahara. And as for like cool one-liners, like you were saying, Doofy, like one of the moments that gave me like chills when I was reading the manga was with Urahara's fight with Askin, and he was like, if you don't have like 300 plans just in case, you're like prepared to die. And it was like him.
Yes.
Yeah. It was like, you remember the one I'm talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah, dude, that was crazy, dude.
I'm so bad at particulars. I'm so glad you had at least one positive thing to cite about Urahara, because I had nothing. To be fair, though, I have like Urahara and Aizen are like my top 3 Bleach characters, and I don't think I have a single quote from either of them to support like why they would be my favorite. It's more so like just an overall reaction to Bleach and their character. But I guess that gets more into our second question. But anyways, keep going. I like this.
Yeah, so there's a lot of these moments with Urahara when you're like, oh my god, this guy's genuinely terrifying.
Yeah.
And for example, like Aizen was so close to achieving what he wanted, right? But he just couldn't comprehend and couldn't plan for Ichigo beating him. That just wasn't a thing he considered, right? I see that as a shortcoming, because I think if it was Urahara that did the same shit Aizen was doing, it'd be infinitely more successful, right off the rip, right? And B, Urahara wouldn't be like he wouldn't what was it called? Not fall on his sword, but he wouldn't just take the L. You know what I mean? He'd be like, it's funny because Aizen said something similar, but just in a very inverted way. He was like, only a loser accepts that kind of worldview or philosophy, when he was like screaming at Urahara when he was getting sealed, which I appreciate. But I think if it was Urahara, he wouldn't just give up after Ichigo did that thing where he beat him. Did that thing where he beat him. What the fuck is wrong with me? But yeah. So
I think it's just I think it might just be like a fundamental difference, and I guess what I value for that. Okay, so you mentioned like, because I knew about the Kisuke when he was fighting Askin, right? But I can genuinely count on one hand probably how many times Urahara's cool. This isn't like downplaying his character. It's just I'm comparing like my perspective on his intelligence, or at least the hype I get surrounding his intelligence, or just overall superiority in comparison to like a Mayuri or an Aizen. And it's hard for me to compare that, because like Aizen has this speech about like how gods are born. I want to see if I can pull it up, honestly. Oh, okay. It's like, all beings trust the superior. Okay, I'm not even gonna read it out, honestly, because I can't do it justice. I'm gonna be real with you, but it's super dope, because like I can just think of like so many Aizen lines or quotes or moments that aren't necessarily like from a super logical standpoint more intelligent than Kisuke's, right? You can say, oh yeah, Kisuke is a major component in this even happening, or this even coming to pass, right? But I think Aizen is not portrayed, because that's wrong too, because Kisuke is literally stated to be smarter than him. Aizen gives me the personal vibe that he's just so much more in control, and so much like, I don't know, it's really hard because it's so much of an emotional thing that it's hard to like phrase correctly. He just comes off as so domineering and in control that he fits the trope, to me, better than Kisuke. And that actually, the point you brought up earlier, Doofy, of like that kind of almost bipolar side, or those the duality to Kisuke, in the sense that he's like goofy one moment and then the super serious one-liner the next. While that may add to your like kind of impact of his lines, to me, it doesn't take away. But I think Aizen consistently being that type of like character just makes him fit that trope better for me, if that makes sense.
No, I get that, because I feel like in terms of presence in the story, like Aizen has that in spades. When Aizen's on screen, you know that he's on screen. And I feel like that's a certain quality of a character that you don't have with, say, Urahara, who, even though I love and think is smarter and has like better, overall contributions to the plot in certain respects, it's just like when Aizen's there, you just know he's there.
Yeah.
Like it's that simple.
That man's attention.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And I extend that to both Naruto and Hunter x Hunter as well. Same with Orochimaru. Even though there's so many things to be said against Orochimaru, when that motherfucker on screen, you just know he's there. Like he just demands the attention. And same with Hisoka, right? In Hunter x Hunter, like just there's something so drawing and alluring about that kind of archetype that you can't help but to look at him and give him the attention that they deserve. And they play their own roles perfectly, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to, like, my thing with Kisuke, of course, is that the way that he kind of, again, is kind of the aloof character 90% of the time. To me, the fact that he has to go, serious mode at any point is just a kind of emphasis of how serious the current moment is. And I think in those instances, he has more presence than even Aizen would have. But of course, given his overall character, that's not the kind of like the commonplace usage of Kisuke. Yeah. So that's not exactly how he's normally presented. And so I think overall, Aizen has more of this presence, and I can see why you would put him in that trope more than him. It's Mayuri that's given more difficulty because
so let's
Mayuri is just like a watered down like Aizen and Kisuke.
Mayuri,
that's it.
Mayuri. Okay, so here's what Mayuri has that I think Kisuke doesn't portray. As I think it's that because part of it is not just them being smart, right? Part of it is that like, is it sadistic? No, it's that toying with other people. I think so. Like, Light mentally manipulating other people is like. Now this sounds twisted. Just so you guys know, this doesn't for the viewers. This isn't like something I actually believe or in real life, obviously, because it's gonna sound weird. But Light mentally just manipulating and breaking the people around him is just so cool for some reason. Just him like completely like you guys know the scene. Have both of you guys watched Death Note? I'd assume so.
Yeah. I was waiting for Kreams' response.
Yeah.
Kind of insulted. Ronin, I was kind of even insulted that you had to ask me that. Bro.
Listen. I just had to make sure because
to make sure your question shocked me.
Kreams, you haven't watched Naruto in its entirety, so like that's like to me that's just as basic as like Death Note. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Bro, the difference is like 6,000 episodes. Calm down.
Yeah, fair enough.
True. I'll give you that, Kreams, baby.
But there's this scene where Light meets up with that like cop chick or whatever, right? I can't remember her name. I haven't read Death Note in a bit. But she's basically like on the verge of telling L this super important detail that Light can or Kira can sometimes kill without a heart attack, right? Mm-hmm. So Light having to figure out and like almost losing the mental battle because he's given an alias or whatever. That whole encounter of like Light just breaking her down and like slowly manipulating her into giving him what he wants, like information wise, is just such a cool thing to me. Like it's super cool to see that, right? And it happens with most characters that fit in that trope have at least one moment like that. And Urahara is very intelligent, smarter than Mayuri in almost every facet, but what he doesn't do because of like I guess his moral compass is whatever, is to me mentally manipulate and like twist the enemies that he goes against, right? Mayuri has the whole perfection speech where Sialopero was like he's like, whatever, like I can't, everything is slowed down, blah, blah, blah. And Mayuri's speech of like kind of like owning that superiority to him is something that I very much enjoy. Mayuri's encounter with Zombie Toshiro, where he looks to be at a disadvantage until it's like, plot twist. Toshiro's already been drugged since the beginning of the fight, blah, blah, blah. Like those moments of like complete like mental reversals are just super cool to me. And Urahara, while he has like that intelligence, I can't think of a time where he is like mentally deconstructed or broken down, enemy or friend, in that way. He's lied, he's been sneaky, he's been somewhat manipulative, but I find a maybe arbitrary difference between what he does and what like a character like Aizen or Mayuri does.
Now, real quick, okay, Kreams might have something more explicit to respond to this, but I feel like this really nicely leads into like the next interpretation of the question regarding philosophies about how we go about anime and manga, because here you're very clearly espousing a kind of like, this is my definition beforehand of how this character should be, and how well they're able to fit that will determine your ranking of them to a certain extent. And so I just feel like you can have a complete opposite perspective where you don't have any preconceived notions of how a character should be, and then you kind of just evaluate them as such. So that's kind of difference in philosophies about going about anime, and that's a completely different question than what we were previously tackling. I just thought that this would be a nice way to transition into. But if Kreams, if you have anything you'd like to drag on farther about the previous discussion, by the way, we also have a whole Bleach collaboration happening in the future, so keep that in mind. But do you have anything you really need to say to Broken Rogan on this point right now?
No, because I guess we were trying to further understand how he thinks about the philosophy he explained was like his preference. Yeah. It wasn't really so much trying to convince him that he was wrong.
Right, exactly. And that's why I feel like we need to just kind of stop it.
Yeah, so I guess we can transition into the second one, which is like you said, like how do we go about like evaluating it and things like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we now getting into Doofy's interpretation of the prompt?
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, remind me.
So essentially, I interpreted the prompt as like, what is your philosophy when it comes to approaching an anime? Like, how do you evaluate it essentially? What principles do you bring to the anime? What do you use in your evaluation of it? And I guess related questions to that. And Kreams, as always, go first. What do you have to say on the issue?
Oh, I thought you were going to go first because it was your interpretation. So I wanted to use you as like how to answer.
Well, for one, and maybe this is something you can both talk about. I explicitly reject the ideas of any like kind of like rubrics for evaluating anime. I think it's so mind-numbing when you have like your 10 criteria in front of you and you're going to watch an anime and you're going to make sure like, okay, this checks off this box and this box and this box. Oh, I missed this box. That's such a robotic way to approach an anime. And of course, I don't expect this experience to be universal, but for a lot of people who have graded papers, for example, if you use a rubric, you will come out with a certain score, yet there's a kind of disparity between the score the rubric yields and how you just intuitively felt about it. And to me, the rubric is almost misleading because at many points in the anime, you can ask yourself, but why is this the criteria we're using to evaluate this particular scene? Like, this doesn't seem adequate given, the fact that this is a scene that's supposed to subvert expectations and therefore it's supposed to actually let you down here. And so the fact that it reflects poorly on evaluation, I don't think is a function of the fact that the anime is bad. I think it's a reflection of the fact that your criteria are bad. But I think ultimately this is all situated in the fact that using any rubric is bad because any scene is, contextualized in, it sounds stupid, but like the greater scene that it's situated within, the greater arc. So if a scene is expected to subvert certain expectations, using a rubric, you might of course think that this is bad because it's not doing the things that it's expected to do. But in terms of how it progresses the plot, it's very functional, it's practical even, and there isn't a better way to go about transitioning this arc into another. And so I just think that, for instance, using rubrics is very shallow. It doesn't ever really capture the essence of how you think of an anime, but rather what I vouch for is a kind of intuitionalistism. That's a whole lot of fucking syllables. But ultimately, like, when you finish an anime, you simply just have some semblance of how it falls on your 10-point scale. After watching Code Geass, I just kind of knew like it was a 7. There's no mathematical formula that was telling me why it was a 7. I don't have like this explicit rubric, but I feel like doing it this way is more accurate to how I feel about it. And so I guess ultimately the way I feel and rank anime is much more dependent upon, I guess, my own individual feelings. And those criteria I think are valuable, but ultimately I don't have, 10 steps to having a good anime in front of me. I simply watch it, I like it or I don't, basically. And then I just say, well, how much do I like it? And then I might think a little more about it. I might say, okay, I like this anime, but how much? Okay, here's Angel Beats. I give this an 8.5. Does this anime do this better? No. Does this anime do this thing better? Yes. And then that's kind of the process I go about, when determining the difference between an 8.5 and an 8.6. But ultimately, I'm situating things, on the 10-point scale on the basis of like, okay, I watched this. This was fucking awesome. 9. And I only bring this up because I think that we have a lot to discuss here. Because you were like, Ronin, you're giving all these chapters a 10, but at the same time, I'm like, if bro just was thinking that these chapters were a 10, then like it was a 10. Like, I don't know, like there's not a whole lot more to like really say on that issue. Like, it's just kind of how bro was feeling at that time. But anyway, I think that generally outlines how I feel about evaluation, my philosophy about evaluating. My particular point was just against any kind of rubric. So I hate those reviews that are like, let's now look at this anime in terms of like, story, art, characters, and overall. I just think that's a shallow way to look at an anime, and like no anime is meant to be looked at in that way, which I think is very problematic on behalf of the reviewer. But please, I rambled on for very long, saying nothing.
No, I
Please
think
save
that
this
was
podcast.
I think that was extremely
I think-
interesting, personally.
I think, yeah, so do I, but I think you're absolutely wrong. Here's why.
Interesting.
I don't think that there's no objectivity in how we rate stuff, because when you get down to it, the person watching a review of something or the person absorbing the art, I'm talking about like the most like, normal common denominator consumer you can think of, they're going to understand predetermined structures of how we measure quality. So they're going to be like, well, I'm looking for if it has a good plot. I'm looking for if it has good characters.
Kreams,
whatever. Hold on.
Kreams, I gotta come right here. You've already said so many wrong
Alright.
things that I need to interject right now. Okay, so you've
Oh my
already
God.
said that, like, okay, the average user already has an understanding of like what's a good story, what's a good character, and therefore they are.
No, that's
That
not
is-
what I was getting.
okay.
I was trying to say that's what they're look. This is purely for them looking at like reviews at something, because like that's when we really get down to it. I'm not talking about like them organically assessing art. I'm talking about them engaging with somebody else's rating of assessing art, because I wanted to like touch on your 10 scale criticism thing.
Okay. Keep saying your piece,
yeah,
but
so-
like as I interpreted you, I thought you were saying, okay, just so we can make sure that you're clear on what exactly I was apparently misinterpreting. I thought you were saying that like, okay, people have an understanding of what a good story or character consists in because they've watched so much, and therefore they're looking for that. And so when they don't meet that, and so like essentially, what you're advocating for is the kind of criterionist view, whereby we watch anime according to criteria, which I don't think is the case at all.
No.
But like again, this is a
not
misinterpretation according to you, and so please continue.
It's okay. I accept your apology. Anyway, what I was trying to say was that these people have just generally been told that that's like what makes a good thing in art, and it's like shit like the 3-act structure, the perfect ratio in photography, for example, right? The golden ratio, I think it's called. There's like shit like that where if somebody even has like a passing understanding of any of the like measurements that we just arbitrarily use to explain why something is good or whatever, like they don't see it as like this purely subjective thing, even if subconsciously they might or whatever. What they probably see it as is something closer to how you measure length.
No.
I'm still not.
I know,
done.
but you're just saying so many wrong things right now, and you're leading the audience in a certain way that I think is just so misleading.
I haven't even made my claim yet.
And that's the problematic thing, because I could see exactly like how these steps are going towards a very problematic conclusion that I will later have to do so much unpacking and so much de-arguing that it's just problematic.
You want to
just skip ahead? Go ahead, debunk it.
Okay,
just
let it start automatically. Yeah.
Okay. Go on. You going ahead?
Did you? No, I feel like you had something to say real quick.
I was just gonna say that, like, I feel like since I'm going last, we could kind of bounce back and forth on that too. But when I cover my sort of a version or I answer to this version of the question, I think I want to address both things that you guys said. So I think that it could lead nicely into it. So we'll let him. I feel like letting him do his thing, say what he wants, and then we can kind of discuss it. You can use some of my portion of the answer to discuss what he says if you want to do that.
You've almost kind of said that, like, initially I said, okay, what you are saying is that people just have an idea of what is good regarding characters and story. And you said, no, that's not what I'm saying. And then you went on to explain something else that I think functionally says the exact same thing. Like people just have an idea of what is a good story, what is a good character. Is this not what you're saying right now?
No, I'm saying they've been told that that's what it is.
Okay, what is the significance of being told here?
What is the relevance of that?
Because functionally, I feel like you're trying to say the same thing both ways.
I guess, but like the point I'm trying to, it's not my claim. It's not something. It's not that I believe it. I just see it as like happening. So when it comes to people, I don't know if the average person who doesn't like live on the internet rates things like out of 10 or like in tier lists or whatever. They might without knowing that that's what they're doing, but I don't think it's that rigid. So I think that's like an online internet thing, first off. Second, when people are like trying to explain why they like a thing, they usually fall back on like one of these aspects. So like, oh, I like the characters, I like how it looks, I don't know, I just think it's good, something along those lines. It's not necessarily the same, but it's functionally the same as somebody giving a 10 rating, because it's just two people giving their opinions, right? The only difference is that the person who's giving their opinion like online on like a 10 rating is doing so in a way that's presented as more objective, even if they preface it as not, like if they're like deliberately, this is my opinion, this is just how I'm delivering the information, the person is kind of then primed to accept it, even along those lines, as objective, because numbers are inherently, they have some kind of inherent objectivity to them. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is it's not something to completely invalidate, because like to just how normal people get to explaining why they like a thing.
But
the methodology might be different, I grant you, but they still kind of always revert to the same thing.
Is that, yeah, but like,
because you're only dealing with other people, dude. This is like the shit that always gets on my nerves. You're only dealing with other human beings on a day-to-day basis. Getting this theoretical makes no sense, because they're going to look at you like you're a psychopath.
To undermine like the fact that everything we do in theoretical life. No, you're trying to undermine the fact that everything we do in practical life has some kind of theoretical basis. You're trying to say that because we're trying to abstract to the level of what is actually the grounding and moving principle of each of our actions and evaluation, therefore this is more abstract and not valuable. I feel like that's such like a non-argument, because like even if I am not actively thinking about how I'm evaluating things, the fact remains there is some actual principle moving me in regards to how I evaluate something. And this is true literally of every human being on earth. So the fact that I'm trying to make explicit what exactly is going on when every person looks at an anime, I don't think that makes it less valuable. I'm just trying to dig out what is actually going on. In my opinion, this is the most concrete thing you can do on this platform, because honestly, otherwise you're just kind of doing nothing but submitting to the kind of popularity of some criterion or like some anime, which has no inherent value to me, but rather I'm trying to look at what exactly is moving us when we have these discussions. And you're trying to like devalue that, and that's, I don't know, that's so reductionist.
I'm not. I'm saying that thing that you're trying to. I'm saying that thing you're trying to find. It's almost, if it's so common in humans, doesn't that mean there's some kind of biological objectivity to it?
No, absolutely not. No. Because listen, you're talking. We're talking about.
I want to interject real quick here.
Okay, Ronin.
Ronin. Real quick. There are so Kreams. Just to give you like a more concrete analogy, there are plenty of like very dumb ideologies or ideas that people have that are just rooted in things that you can kind of provably show to be incorrect, or that you can argue from like a morality standpoint are incorrect. There are millions of people who believe idiotic things. Like what you're doing is you're appealing to popularity, right? You're saying because a lot of people think this, therefore there is some truth to it, or that those things don't correlate whatsoever, right? A lot of people thinking something or believing something does not lead to it being true, right? There's maybe some underlying reason that they think it is true, but if 7 billion people think that One Piece is better because it has 1,000 chapters, right? That does not make that statement true. It just makes it popular. So what I'm saying is the basis of the argument is faulty, because you're appealing to popularity and asserting that popularity equates to some level of truth.
All right, shit. You guys like fuck. I concede. Damn.
I have one more. I have. Might I just add like this single other comment? Kreams, you're kind of like touching on this distinction between like what we know of versus what is the fact. So like, there is a fact about how exactly we go about evaluating anime. I don't think anybody would concede otherwise. Like, there's simply a certain pattern that we do individually, watch an anime and evaluate it according to. But the meaningful distinction here is what we know of. So even though all of us, kind of follow how exactly we should evaluate an anime, we don't all know that we're following it. 99% of us don't. And that's the kind of what I'm trying to uncover. I'm trying to uncover the fact of evaluation, not so much what we know of. So, like, yes, you're absolutely right. Your average human being is not going to know that, values are inherently subjective, and the way that we evaluate anime is according to like these subjective criteria that are determined by the community. But like, yeah, absolutely. Most humans don't know that. But the fact remains that there is something underlying it objectively that can be excavated. And that's exactly what I think this analysis is trying to do. And I just think this is more concrete than anything else you can discuss with regards to evaluation.
But you just said that thing you're essentially trying to find is objective, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a difference between aesthetic objectivity and epistemological objectivity.
So do you believe in like true objectivity then?
Yeah.
You just haven't found it yet. Is that like what you're getting
like what
at?
we can know? Yeah, we can. I mean, again, this is in my opinion. Okay, so you might try to condition this with some kind of ultimate solipsism and that kind of subjectivity that comes with it. You might try to say that any claims to truth values are, subjective. Sure, have your thing. But at the end of the day, for practical purposes, I do think that there are certain things that we can just know objectively. And I think the way we evaluate things is one of those things. The status of values as subjective, I think, is objective. So the fact that good and bad are only determined subjectively, I think that fact is objective. Likewise, I think that the way we observe and evaluate anime using those objective or those those subjective values is objective. Like, it's not saying that Berserk is objectively good, but it's saying, Broken Ronin objectively read Berserk. Broken Ronin objectively ascribed the value of good to it. Therefore, Broken Ronin thinks it's good. That's all objective. There's nothing subjective there in the way I framed it. Now, if we were look at it from like Ronin's perspective, okay, the value of good, subjective. The fact that I'm ascribing it to Berserk, subjective. And ultimately my thoughts on Berserk, subjective. So there's two different frames of reference we can look at the issue from. And that's the distinction that needs to be kept in mind here. So again, epistemically, when it comes to things that we think we can know, theories of thought, theories of knowing, theories of knowledge, I think there's objectivity there. However, the moment the values of good and bad come into the picture, I think those are objectively subjective. Do with that what you will, but I think I've described that in at least comprehensible terms that I think we can have a discussion about.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. It's a lot to. I mean, I think I agree for the most part, honestly. So basically, just to reword it in a little bit of a simpler way for myself, honestly. Basically, you agree that like things of like, okay, Naruto does exist. That is an objectively true statement. Naruto has 700 chapters, objectively true. But those 700 chapters are bad. Objectively a subjective claim, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got you. I just wanted to make sure I was tracking everything. So,
go.
Okay, basically, here's the question. Do you think that there is this, like, objective metric, right, that you follow or that people need to, not necessarily need to follow, but that you personally follow when grading anime? Like, if it checks off this box, this box, this box, it is good. And that is something that is not rooted in subjectivity, but it is something that is the case, like, outside of your own head.
I can answer your question with a statement, and you can derive my philosophy from that. I think subjectively Demon Slayer is a 6 out of 10, but I think it's objectively an 8 out of 10.
Okay, and would you say that, like, that's your piece on the that I guess the second interpretation of the philosophical question, if you will?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just if you guys want me to elaborate further on that point, I don't know. You get never mind. It'll end up with me making generalizations, and we'll end up talking in circles. So yeah, I just want to move on.
Could I just perhaps afford a possible interpretation as what you mean?
Okay.
So you said, repeat the statement real quick. I just don't want to make sure like I'm misquoting you on this.
This is a real opinion, by the way. I subjectively think Demon Slayer is a 5 out of 10, but it's objectively an 8 out of 10.
Are you saying with that you think Demon Slayer is, you personally, all things considered, think Demon Slayer is whatever, but you could see how others would rank it higher on the basis of certain criteria that others value, such as, I don't know, certain plot points and certain characterization points.
Yes.
And characterization.
Yes, that is literally...
That's exactly your claim? Okay. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's there's nothing I could contest against that. Like, that's simply what you think about yourself and what you think about others. Like, there's it's subjective through and through. You're using objective there just to kind of like call upon the popular opinion, which again is not subjective, but like, I mean, for practical purposes, we'll just say like whatever. It's what you mean by objective.
But dude, you and I have had this conversation. Like, that's how I use objective. I even said it to you like that. I was like, yo, this is how I use the word objective.
I know. Yeah, and I told you that I think it's problematic, and like I think it creates more trouble than it does pleasure. But I mean, that's just how we be sometimes. I like creating a bit of animosity, so I mean, I can't even charge you with being. I can't even charge your claim with producing unnecessary harm when I actively do the same for other reasons. So it's like it'd be hypocritical. So I mean, it is what it is. I still think you're misusing the term. I still think that this usage of the term is more harmful than not. But I think all things considered, like that's just how you be using it, and it's fine as is.
Yeah. So my whole my version of it is pretty simple. Like when it comes to ranking, what I like is good, what I don't like is bad. Like, okay, so I'm gonna extrapolate on that, but I mean that so seriously. If I don't enjoy, barring extenuating circumstances, like I wouldn't say I like Evangelion, but I like Evangelion, if that makes sense. Like, I did not enjoy the process of watching that anime, right? But I will say I value it, not because I think there's some like, other people do, they hold it in high regard. I value it because it was valuable for me in my own introspection. But that is like one of the only examples I can think of an anime that I didn't enjoy, but that I value outside of enjoyment. Like, I think it was important for me rather than like it's good, but it's not good for my enjoyment. It was just important for my own personal development. That's an extenuating circumstance. Most of the time, if I have fun reading it or enjoy it, it is good, right? And how I'll kind of go deeper into that is, if I enjoy something enough, I will then proceed to analyze why I think it's good. So like when I say something like, Megumi's character arc or whatever, like this, like, the symbolism of blah, 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 the parallels between him and Sukuna, whatever you want to say, right? Or Sauske, I'm like, wow, he's just such a deep character. Sauske isn't good because he's deep, right? He's good because I like him. And I'm now like furthering like, okay, so why do I like his character? Like these like character development's good, symbolism's good, blah blah blah. Those things to me at least only matter because they determine or at least help determine my enjoyment. Right?
Yeah.
Sasuke's growth over the span of Naruto is good because I enjoyed it, right? And then for the sake of other people and for the sake of articulation, I will then explain, okay, because I can just think he's good and that won't get my point across to other people. So I'll explain why I think he's good. But whether or not people say, oh, that doesn't make him good, you're wrong. It does. And I'll leave it at that to some extent, right? That's why I think something like Grand Blue, which is a comedy manga, is a 10 out of 10. Simply because it is extremely fun to read. That's it. It's funny, and I had the most fun I've had reading a manga in a while when I was binging that. Therefore, it's better than JJK. It's better than My Hero. It's the best ongoing series for me right now. Purely because I can't tell you, oh, the thematic, what blah blah blah, the character development. I haven't dove into why I like Grand Blue. It's funny. That's basically where I've gotten so far, and it's good because I like it. It's super simple, but that's it for me. That's basically where I leave it.
I think actually that's just a more elegant way to say what I've said. God damn, I'm jealous, Ronin, man. Like, you were able to like just cut to like the core of it, and I feel like I just word souped my way around like a half-assed theory, but like you really, like, I absolutely agree. Like, ultimately, what you read and simply enjoy is what you think is good. Like, it's that bare bones, I think. I don't think you owe anyone an explanation as to why you think this is good. Like, I don't expect anyone who has like Fate Zero as their favorite anime. I don't expect you to have a whole essay ready to defend why it's your number one spot. I just expect you to be able to say, like, I watched 12 episodes, or I guess 24. It's a 2-season thing. And like, I enjoyed every second of it. Therefore, my favorite. I'm like, okay, cool, fair enough. I have nothing more to say critically. Because I don't think anime manga like is a necessarily critical medium. It's entertainment by definition. And so just fulfilling that basic requirement of being entertaining, that alone is sufficient to merit a 10 for me, regardless of anything. Like, now you might find and derive pleasure from finding these deep themes in Naruto or Hunter x Hunter, and that's fine. Like, and that's totally like up to you. And like, if that's how you drive your, like, if that's the difference between Hunter x Hunter being a 9 and a 10, like the fact that you were able to do that, then like absolutely, like you do it. But ultimately, like it's comes down to your entertainment at some level, and that's, I mean, again, just why I maintain that it's subjective, and that like you don't owe anyone an explanation as to why you like someone or something, I guess.
Yeah, I think that probably helps kind of extrapolate on my point, because I think that speaks to it really well. I enjoy the process of figuring out why I liked it, if that makes sense. So like,
Yes,
liking Sauske and then delving into, okay, oh wow, this was super cool, and that makes me appreciate his character even more. And then it's like this positive feedback loop of, wow, really great character. Oh wow, this is something I didn't notice on my first watch. I like him even more, and then I'll continue to do that. And that also works for the flip side. If I look at something in a negative light, like what's something I don't like? Hitman Reborn, right? I read the first 100 chapters of that. Oh my god, that was shit.
Yep.
And I will, and if somebody asks me and they ask me for justification outside of the fact that it was just bad, the already negative emotions I have towards it cause me to now find faults in it that I wouldn't necessarily find in other series.
Yeah.
Even if they are present. Like, there are certain things that are simply passable because it's Naruto, or because it's Bleach, or because it's JJK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah.
And like with your case of Evangelion, where you did not personally enjoy your going through of it, but you still have some kind of value for it. I don't think that's all that odd, because I mean, my first viewing of Evangelion was actually quite critical. I thought that it was like kind of lame. I thought it was very generic and stereotypical. I thought that a lot of what it did was like uninspired. But after rewatching it again and like thinking more about it, like the fun I got out of it was more so derived from me watching like these fucking 10-hour video essays on like the world of Eva, and that was where I found my pleasure. And so like I could take that knowledge and turn it back to Evangelion for like the third time and just say, oh my god, this is like why it's so good. But like, yeah, in that initial viewing, shit was not that great. And so if somebody says Eva's bad, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Somebody says Eva's good, like, yeah, I super get it. And so like I personally fall on the latter scale, but like I feel like the argument you've said has done like more than say like, okay, my initial viewing wasn't amazing, but I can kind of see how like other people might think this is good. Again, appeal to kind of common criteria, but this is always an afterthought, a reflection, like totally independent of how you actually viewed it the first time. And that's why I think I ultimately follow through with your, like, if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. Because whatever you simply intuitively feel at a moment with regards to some anime, I think that holds more than any reflective judgment. So I just think that Hunter x Hunter is bad. I don't need to think more about it than that. I didn't enjoy watching it. Like, that's it. Now that can drive, like you said, I think very nicely you said that drives you to find reasons, which I think is true. But I feel like the most intimate expression of your thoughts of a series are in that most basic level of like, I watched it bad, and that's it, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's everybody for the second interpretation. That just leaves yours, BR.
Yeah. So the third interpretation, for everybody that might have gotten lost in the weeds there, or maybe just didn't remember, is basically like the way I saw the question is like what is your favorite? So I'm kind of misconstruing or like kind of swapping out ideology and philosophy simply because I'm not smart enough to know the difference. I don't really know like what the functional difference is between the two. Like, I could list off both definitions, but that doesn't really help me like know what the difference is. So basically, like, favorite ideology or philosophy that an anime character holds. Not necessarily one that you believe in, obviously, because anime is a lot of times sensationalized and doesn't like allow for somewhat more like central placement in that, but that are just interesting to you or kind of like engaging. For me, I'll say, I don't know like a specific term for it, but I would say like Lelouch's kind of ideal on everything he approached. Uh, one thing that, like, one quote that sticks out to me quite a bit, just like every time I think of the character, um, if you know, if strength is righteousness, then is weakness a sin, right? Now I may be paraphrasing that a little bit, but it's always kind of stuck with me, especially with how it's kind of portrayed in Code Geass, of Lelouch being like this uh, sort of bona fide defender of the weak. Um, I will say a lot of my enjoyment for his character does directly stem from the fact that I like the trope he fulfills. So part of it is probably going to be tinted through that vision. But I just like overall, I guess, utilitarian, like his willingness to sacrifice himself and others for his goal is always something that I found like a somewhat interesting moral dilemma, and one that I've like mentally participated in myself to see like, okay, what do I think, like what is my like what am I taking away from seeing this, outside of just like we kind of were alluding to earlier, pure enjoyment? What is the that second or third layer that I'm getting, right? Okay, so like obviously he thinks he can sacrifice other people. Um, you know, what do I think, right? You know, there's like common, I think, philosophical little exercises, super basic ones, where it's like, you know, to save five people, are you willing to push one onto the train tracks or something like that? Paraphrasing once again. And I just like kind of doing those little mental, I guess, questions for myself. It just helps with a little bit of introspection that I like doing. But that's mine personally.
Uh, can you go next, Doofy? I like need some time to think about this.
It's difficult. Like I see what you're saying, because the first thing that comes to mind is not even an active philosophy held by any particular character in the series, but is one that's like heavily implied by the author writing it. And so I'm thinking here of Arigato by Naoki Yamamoto. Very disturbing manga. I don't recommend anybody read it, because I think there's just so much potency in like the first four chapters that would scare anybody off. But what I like about the series is that each character is kind of crafted with a very clear ideology regarding like one's self-image, regarding not regarding, but like with respect to the public. And so the father, for instance, does a great job. Well, great relative to like his ability to perform his function, but not necessarily morally great. Just hiding what's going on with his family from the public, from his employer, from his employees, and his coworkers. And so his whole, like the driving force of the father's character is that he does not want anyone to know that his daughter has, been raped. That's the driving force of the story. But I think the ultimate morality that the mangaka is trying to pronounce here is that when you try to sacrifice your role in private life for the sake of some public image, there are much more negative consequences, and that's why the daughter gets involved with like some, I guess, pimp, and this whole series of events that I think the father tries his best to hide, but ultimately, because he's trying to hide it, it only further perpetuates the daughter's involvement in these other things. Because again, it's just a constant dialectic between the father's controllingness and the daughter's just, I want to be free, do my own thing, you're handling this poorly. It's just back and forth constantly, and it expresses in different ways. And so the active ideology in all of this is that the mangaka wants to express that when you sacrifice personal life for the sake of public image, you have dire results. That's an ideology I can respect from the mangaka. Now, there's no one particular character in the manga that I think perfectly expresses that, but I think it's kind of implied by the actions of everybody within that we get that perspective. So I don't know if this exactly answered the question, but that would be the first mangaka and manga I point to in terms of just some ideology and its representation. In this case, it's a negative representation in the sense that like it's simply what's not being expressed that we get the positive philosophy, but that's probably my answer. I don't know if that's just like too outside of what the question is. I don't know if that's just too abstract. I don't know if I'm relying on too much knowledge of the story without having actually explained it. But please, if you have anything to say, I invite it.
Personally, I think it applies. I think it applies, like, because it's a philosophy, because it never states it has to be of a character. I just apply it to a character because he embodies that philosophy for me very strongly. I think of an anime or manga, obviously, but I think it applies pretty strongly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly,
My only
Yeah,
reason for
I agree that it
framing
applies.
it, my only reason for framing it in that negative sense is because I feel like whenever you just focus on like a particular speech of a character, identify it as a part of some other philosophy, then generalize the whole character. It's essentially, well, it's essentialism. You're saying that, pain exhibits some kind of tendency towards like the sharing of pain amongst all. Maybe there's some strange argument to be had about pain being a socialist, and then like you simply interpret everything he does in light of that interpretation, which is how humans naturally function, and I guess that's fine in that basic sense. But it can just be so reductive because it kind of undermines the parts of, for instance, pain that might be counter to that, and that would might spark an interesting discussion about like how pain might be like anti-socialist. I know this is such a weird abstract political interpretation that I don't necessarily think holds, but again, just by essentializing any character, you undermine the possibility of them going against that and having a more interesting conversation. And so that's why I'm hesitant to just simply endorsing the explicit philosophy of any character, because I feel like that might undermine things they have to say in opposition to that, because you'll just try to interpret it away in other ways that would be less productive, in my opinion. So that's why I
Yeah.
kind of go for the implied philosophy of a whole series, because there's nothing.
Okay.
It's not essentialist to any character, and I think it just it builds on what everyone else is already doing. So
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I will say
okay.
I was being very reductionist when it comes to like because part of his like character arc is being a very blatant hypocrite um
Hmm.
in his ideologies or whatever, very easily able to sacrifice others in order to move forward his goal. But when it comes to the people around him, that utilitarian ideal just crumbles. And obviously, I said utilitarianism, whatever, blah blah blah, just because I like the way he portrays it. But I think more like most well written characters, quote unquote, most good characters are multidimensional. They aren't just talking pieces for like this one idea. And I think that's like you said, part of the like beauty of discussing these characters because if they were simply this and this had to be the case, the discussion couldn't really be had. It would just be an observation of yes, Lelouch is this. This is what he represents. And I don't think personally, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think like an anime character just being a philosophical talking piece is that interesting.
Yes, sir.
I always think it's a portrayal of that
Oh
rather than
man,
just them representing it.
dude, what an astute observation! Because that is, I feel, the biggest issue with any content creator doing anime-related content. In their dire attempt to make some quote-unquote deep analysis of some character, they will result to nothing more than character X exhibits this philosophy. And that, oh my god, I've been so critical of this for like months now. Like, for instance, on TikTok, I said that Levi wasn't a well developed, rounded character. And I was instantly met with floods of fucking comments that said, well, actually, he embodies the principles of Stoicism, therefore he's good. I'm like, whoa, whoa,
Yeah,
whoa. Hold it up,
I
bro.
honestly,
Like, no,
yeah,
go.
honestly take fault with. So here's the thing: when people like start asserting, "Oh, this character develops," or they have symbolism, or whatever. I honestly can tell like what type of discussion I'm about to have if I decide to engage with them in the first place,
Hmm?
based off of that. So like,
Yep.
I had this tweet where I was like, "Yeah, Noel isn't that good."
Hey guys, we're getting like off topic. Like I want to transition into this because I wanted to ask Doofy about the whole problem with Anitube thing. So I just want to give my thoughts on Ronin's interpretation, then we can segue. All right, bro, I just realized I haven't like spoken in oh my god like 10-15 minutes. It was a fun conversation to listen to though.
For sure. So what is you? What would you say? Because I personally, I was just trying to give you some time. I didn't know if you had come up with yours yet, but um, so what is your like favorite philosophy in anime then?
Well, I don't know. See, the thing is, when I heard like as I heard you and Doofy dissecting everything, I kind of agree with him in that when you ascribe characters, ascribe certain themes to a character, and you present them as like not set in stone, but you don't allow room for discussion or alternative it, interpretations of them. You get a sense that it's like the end. like no discussion. So I guess like if I had to come at it from a purely subjective, like this is what works for me. I just really like when a character is revolutionary in some way. So I say character, but this could apply to story as well. But just for the sake of an example, like for example, like Aizen's desire to not be controlled by anyone is something I really resonate with, because I'm not sure about you guys, but I don't like when people control me. And when it comes to things like trying to defy the status quo of like a government or something, like surprisingly, like Asta, like he's a very revolutionary character if you think about it. Well, not really, because he kind of still wants to work in the system that's like it's a little complicated. His is more of a like a I want to change it from within kind of person, not necessarily I want to overhaul the whole thing, because it's not like if Asta becomes a Wizard King, like everything else, like class systems won't still exist, whatever. But that's like a personal bone to pick with Black Clover, not necessarily a philosophy beef. But yeah, I guess I just don't like rigid structure or like rigid hierarchies unless they serve a purpose narratively. But if we're just speaking philosophically purely, I like revolution and resistance as a philosophy and art I consume.
I think that we can hopefully say we accurately answered the question at least one of these times. like one of these had to have hit. Imagine he's like, no guys, that's not what I meant. Like that would be quite the
yeah. Like we covered every base. Say it again.
If we didn't cover it, we'll have to do exactly what they meant next time.
Exactly.
Of course. You said you wanted to transition into
so
something that Doofy said earlier.
I saw this thing on your Twitter that was like your bone to pick with Anitube or something. What's going on over there?
Bro, you're trying to like get me to spoil a whole ass video on the podcast? What the fuck?
Don't think of it as a spoiler. Think of it as a little bit of a second taste, if you will.
Yeah.
Let me just like do an all out. So I started today actually with a post on my community tab, just asking what other people have to say about like Anitube in general. And I think really quickly we realized there are just certain inherent issues with doing this that are ultimately toxic. And I think I have a problem with that.
Do you have any like lingering examples?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that you are almost bound to either popular series or like generalities. And by that I mean you have to do a video on the new Demon Slayer series. You have to do a video on the new JJK chapter. You are bound to these things if you want to remain relevant, and you need to consistently produce content that will appease the largest audience, which happens to be those that read the most popular series, like by definition.
But isn't that a criticism of YouTube, not necessarily Anitube? Because I know Ronin and I were talking about this like mad heavy last episode.
Yeah. Like they go hand in hand. Like, yeah, absolutely. If you want to produce critical content on anything, you have to critique what's most popular to get the most people to watch it. Like it's something built into Anitube itself by virtue of it being a feature of YouTube itself. So yeah, like the criticism extends to like the video essay tier or like the domain. It extends to like the fucking, I don't know, the Bakugan tier. Like we're only gonna talk about the meta Bakugan. Like yeah, like that's just how it goes. Like you have to talk about what's popular to stay relevant because that's the biggest audience. I think that's just a failure of criticism generally. But the problem is with, and I can only apply this to Anitube because this is the sphere I myself occupy. Like ultimately we make YouTube videos we might say to inform, but ultimately YouTube itself is only a form of entertainment. And so when every big video is nothing more than a rehash of the latest JJK chapter, it's just like there's nothing that qualitatively distinguishes most of them. They don't add anything too insightful to the chapter. The presentation is generally the same. Yeah, I mean, I just hate how repetitive a lot of the mainstream content has become. And I feel like you might even be able to extend that critique back into like the decades I'm more nostalgic about. And I feel like that's probably a fine critique of any era that, you know, whatever is the most popular has to talk about what is the most popular, almost by definition. And that's why I just say like this is something built into the structure of Anitube itself. Like this is just a problem we can't overpass it. It sucks. I wish it was otherwise, but
So
it is what it is.
Going back to what I said about this being like more of a macro YouTube problem. Are there any specific like Anitube idiosyncrasies that are like just particular to that community that you find to be a problem that you couldn't apply across the board to like other communities?
Good ask question, because I don't know many other communities outside of the Anitube, and when I do, it's like some super fucking like out of touch channel that doesn't actually understand like how to produce a video that's supposed to do well.
A good example, like everybody was on the Squid Game wave, right? Regardless of like whatever community. There was just a question, like Mr.Beast. Great example. Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. I remember I wanted to talk to you guys about that. So Mr.Beast Squid Game video, for example, right? In my opinion, I hated it. Not because of like Mr.Beast doing it, not because of like any of the weird shit people were saying that it was like pro-capitalist or whatever. Like it's just a YouTube video, right? The only thing that like really got on my nerves when it came to that criticism, and it's something I actively still have a problem with.
I know which tweet you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's like
the one that's saying like, "Oh, this is the creator economy."
Yeah,
is that one?
Yeah, it was like Mr. Beast's video took like 4 weeks. Squid Game took 10 years. I guess we could see what the futures are really about. And then it got under my skin because obviously, not obviously, you guys wouldn't know this, but I had heard about the creator of the show trying to get this picked up. And it took him like 10 years, and Netflix hardly paid him any of the profits it made from it going like crazy on social media and just on the platform itself. So when people say some dumb shit like, oh my god, this Mr. B should fucking mint this video as an NFT. That was a real tweet I saw, or some shit like that. It really, like, I was just like, you guys have no conception or respect for art. Just right off the rip.
But like, even if I'm looking at myself, I wouldn't consider many of the videos I create art. I would say there's an artistic vision I have when I make them, but I'm about to get into like this kind of like, I guess, my own interpretation of what art is, which is kind of its own can of worms altogether. But to keep it kind of brief, I just don't think something like a YouTube video, especially when you're doing it like on a consistent basis, trying to grow or just trying to get as many views as possible, to me, it's very hard to be purely artistic and appeal to a large majority of people repeatedly. I think there are some concessions you have to make in order to do that, right? I think that's why you see, for example, I guess since, we talk about manga and stuff a lot, just to relate it to manga, I think that's why you see, like, generally speaking, as generations have changed, the type of people who read anime and manga or watch anime and read manga now have changed. The structure or sort of pacing and the length of which anime and manga go on for has somewhat changed in that shorter direction. Not necessarily because that's better artistically, but because it appeals to the people it needs to appeal to in order to keep going, right? I don't know if that helps make any sense. I just don't think that, like, I wouldn't consider Mr. Beast videos art. I would consider them impressive.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't know if I'd equate those two things together necessarily.
So,
and not to say like not being art isn't good. I don't think it really matters.
It's
but
not.
I just don't.
I guess
I don't
like
equate it with art. In
this
my
is
head.
purely just your, I guess, appraisal of what you think the future of creation is, or like where it's headed.
So I have to. I'm gonna try to pull up the tweet real quick just because I want to see. Basically, the claim is like you're able to get more views in less time. Therefore, this is the future of creation. I would say this is wrong because it completely ignores context. To me, the big thing that stands out, and I'm not really mad at the take, I just think it's stupid. It doesn't like annoy me or anything. 7 weeks to make, right? This idea isn't his, right? This isn't something that he did or created or conceptualized, right? And to me, personally, as someone who, I won't say creates art, but makes content, right? The conceptualization of an idea and then executing on that idea are at least equally difficult, if not the conceptualization of a good idea is harder. So to me, coming up with Squid Games and what that message is and things of that nature is much more difficult than actually filming and grabbing the actors and doing all of that. To me, the actual coming up with the good idea is harder than anything that like a parody or a spin-off could do, right? So I think that my biggest gripe, quote unquote, is just with the time. But I mean, I don't really care about the tweet. I just think it's incorrect. I don't necessarily. It doesn't piss me off or anything.
Might I chime in here really quick?
Shoot.
Because I feel like we are defining art in such a narrow way. Going back to like, I don't know, like 5 minutes ago, and I feel like maybe we've since moved from the topic, but I feel like what was implied in your definition of art was that if you're just creating something for the public, it's not art. So I guess I'll just give you the opportunity to tell me more explicitly, like, do you think you can make art that is just for the public? Do you think that still constitutes art, or is that something else? I guess is my first question.
So I think art is something that is necessarily consumed by other people. Um, just because this is something I usually like think about. So this is just kind of like spitballing just raw ideas that are coming to my head. I think by making art, you are necessarily making it for yourself, along with maybe a small select group of other people. In most cases, um, but I think where I differentiate like a YouTube video from like your typical art or whatever, I don't know. It's hard because like I would consider like music art, right? But music is something typically made for the consumption of other people. So it makes it difficult. Let me put it like this, right? I think I want to backtrack a bit. I think when it's made for the consumption of other people exclusively, or at least from my perception exclusively, um, and there is none of your own, I guess, personal expression, I think would be the best way to put it. I think that is where I draw the line between something that's art and not. And so to give you an example, right? My JJK explained videos, right, are not art. I wouldn't consider them art. They're purely informational, like almost instructional guides of like something that is the case in the series, right? However, on that spectrum of art to not art, I would say that I don't know, an analysis of like Toji's purpose in JJK is not necessarily art, right? But it is closer to what art is because it's about my interpretation of his character, what that character means to me. Not necessarily because both of them were made for the consumption of people. Both of them are made for people to view, right? But one has my own expression and interpretation of things, whereas one isn't necessarily made for that.
So it's all about the like expressionist dimension of art for you. Like that is what
Yeah.
sets art from non-art. And that's why again the JJK videos aren't art, because it's just explaining what is. So I
Yeah.
guess my question then would be like, is a portrait of a human art, when all it's doing, on the most basic level, is just simply showing that, hey, this is what the human looks like. This is what Mona Lisa looks like there's nothing more to it other than that. Like, this is the Mona Lisa then not art? And how
So I
how would you account for that, I
yes,
guess?
sure. So this once again, because this is something I think about, so there may be some inconsistencies, and I would love for you to call me out on them so I can think about it. But when I think of like art in that sense of like you're drawing a portrait or something like that, to me, I think barring like hyper realism, that one's I'd say any art of like a portrait that is stylized in any way is still art because it is then your interpretation of that person, if that makes sense. So um like for example, I guess I'll just relate it to my videos because that's what I'm most knowledgeable about, and it can help. Like my mindset can help translate over to this, right? So Toji's character being important to the story is something that is the case, that is factually true, right? He creates a lot of narrative beats that happen later on, right? However, my interpretation of that fact, quote unquote, is still closer to artistry than just the extrapolation of that fact. So like stylized portraits and things of that nature, I would still consider art, even though they are depicting what already exists. They're depicting it in a way that is an expression or extension of themselves. Um, so does that help? Does that answer the question at all?
Yeah, I do see what you mean, because this is again, there's just like this one TikTok professor that does videos that's just like talking about art. I think he's the art guru on TikTok, and he just discusses the difference between fine art and like decor and like these other different disciplinaries of what we would consider art generally. And he says that like this item right here is not fine art because it's simply a representation of a boat. Like, it's decor. Like, it's meant to be put up on in the wall of your room, and it's not actually expressive. But he says fine art, like by definition, has to have this kind of expressive dimension. And so that's why I think you were quite keen to point out that other than hyperrealism, it's all kind of art, in the sense that even if you're drawing something objective, you are expressing it in your own way. You're giving it your view on it. So whether or not you like the object of your art, in the sense of, okay, if I'm drawing a portrait of Ronin and just say I fucking hate Ronin, the way I draw Ronin is going to look a little different, dare I say significantly different, than how somebody who loves Ronin is going to draw him. And it's just going to come out in the most subtle ways, but like there is this kind of expressionism just simply there in the composition. And I think that's the difference between art and non-art. And so that's why I think now I agree that maybe the JJK videos aren't like fine art in the strict sense of like there's nothing kind of interpretive about it. It's just, well, not even that. You're simply describing what you think is there, because it is interpretive. Like you have to
interpret it because it's what I'm understanding from it. But it is the closest to me. It is the closest to like objective observation. Like there are certain points where I'm quite literally just paraphrasing what is said because I think. So I will say this. It's not just like absolutely there's no interpretation because I am changing up what is directly stated in order to make it more digestible, right? But it is much less artistic, I think, than something that is purely my interpretation, purely my understanding of the narrative, right? I think that is because it's closer to just relaying objective information that we can show exists rather than saying, okay, this is what my mental process goes through when I'm reading this, and let me kind of explain or express how it makes me feel, what I think from this that isn't necessarily described in the text.
Can I ask one other question really quick?
Yeah.
You said that the JJK videos are less artistic than something that's more, interpretive and thus expressive. But to me, the idea of being less artistic implies that it is still nonetheless artistic. I mean, maybe this is just like maybe that's just like a colloquial way to express the idea and doesn't strictly fit what you've been saying so far. But in saying that, you've kind of implicitly recognized that the JJK videos are a kind of art, and I just wanted to double check to make sure that's not what I'm saying, or for clarity, I guess is what I'm asking.
So I kind of reframed what I was saying because when I was saying that there's some level of interpretation there, I am conceding that to some, however minuscule level, there is my own interpretation or expression. However, it is so minimal that I don't really like. It's sort of like it's technically right, but my point is more of like the functionality of it rather than like the smaller details. So like yes, it is art by nature of like the definition, or at least my personal definition. It provides some expression in some like of my own like kind of interpretations towards it, but to me it is there's such a small amount of it that I think it's just simpler for me to say no, this is not art, yes, this is art, right? There's not me in there, at least in a significant sense. So I will say like you're not wrong for saying I implied like okay, yeah, less, because saying less artistic does imply there's some to be had there. But it's just a minuscule amount, I think. I guess is the best way.
Oh, okay. I mean that makes sense then.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean I have nothing more to say than that.
So one,
I feel like Kreams, I feel like we've been hogging the limelight here. Please.
Oh no, I just
go in here.
I wanted to because like I went first. Like I brought up the topic. So I want to transition this back to Doofy's point about Anitube, right? Are you seeing any parallels with what Ronin mentioned about like how he approaches these videos? Because I've noticed that it touches on the stuff that you were talking about, like, that you have a beef with. So when he said that he thought the JJK videos he was making were technically like less artistic, quote unquote, isn't that a symptom of the like Anitube problem you described? Doesn't that mean like art on YouTube is its days are numbered?
But this is the thing also, there's a few ways to look at this. For one, I don't think that something being artistic is inherently valuable. For two, even on a platform like YouTube, where I think entertainment is the main, function of the platform, I don't think that being artistic is more valuable than being informative. Again, assuming that they're like somehow diametrically opposed in a certain sense. So even if I think that every mainstream Anitube video is informative and artistic, there still might be some value to be gotten out of that on the basis that it is informative and as we discussed, say with Ava, you can find diving into a series entertaining without finding the series itself entertaining. So in a long-winded way, like these videos are valuable, but for like a completely different reason than the artistic ones I've listed.
It was more like a general. So you come at the problem of Anitube of they're making not repetitive content, but very similar content about very similar subjects. In this case, it's certain series. A lot of there's going to be a lot of Attack on Titan videos when season 2 drops. I think. Excuse me.
Yes.
It's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
So with that being said, right, what happens is that there's going to be a lot of Attack on Titan videos, but we can also say that there's probably going to be a fair bit of really good Attack on Titan videos in that mix, and there's going to be a fair bit of really, really bad ones. So
yes,
what I'm trying to get at is the heart of the tweet, as I interpret it, and I think as it was intended when it was sent out, was the future is no Attack on Titan. It's straight, like, from the YouTube creator to the YouTube audience. And my concern with that kind of thinking is that YouTube is a very, very irritating platform that requires things like a really good thumbnail, a certain kind of title, descriptions, tags, all this shit, right? You can't just say, make the thing. You can't make a YouTube video the same way you can make a TV show. And so
wait. Was your takeaway from my tweet that, like, normatively, YouTube should be this other way, counter to what it is now?
It's more. I'm more asking if that's like if that was a consideration. There you go. So was that like the conclusion that you're drawing? And I wanted to relate it to the tweet I was talking about, because I think it's a very similar conversation to be had.
Yeah, well, that's not what I was calling for. Simply because even if we had something much more unregulated than what YouTube currently is, I think the trends would still fall the way they are currently falling. I think YouTube just amplifies them, makes it more difficult to do things otherwise. By that I mean, okay, the fact that you're reading Demon Slayer over like Believers by Naoki Yamamoto is already just a function of the fact that the latter's more popular, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with like popularity at all. Like, I made a whole video actually defending popularity because that seems to be something that people come down on so hard. But my thing with YouTube is that like it will only benefit the popular while simultaneously just like dousing anything outside of that, and not giving it a chance to thrive. So like you will never see a video, I think, on like Arigato being popular, simply because like, one, the subject matter touches on is too edgy for YouTube. Like, it's not marketable. But for two, like, it's just not popular. Also, like, people don't want to like read that because it doesn't tackle the kind of common themes that are, again, more general to a bigger audience. And YouTube's in the business of making money. So, but even if we were to remove like YouTube's incentive to maximize like profit, if we were to like think about like, again, removing like what people who have ads want to have in videos, if we were to even look aside from all that, Demon Slayer videos would still be most popular because it just appeals to the most people. The particular themes Arigato expresses are like very niche. They apply to a small audience, and the way that it expresses those themes are so controversial that it's difficult to pick up traction in that mode of thought. Whereas Demon Slayer, it's very safe, it's very common themes, it does so well, and that's why like no matter what the platform is, Demon Slayer videos are just going to do better. So as much as I would like to see videos on like this weird shit, it's just not feasible, like on the basis of how humans are and how people produce literature. So it's not that my tweet was a call for a reevaluation of the current structure on YouTube, even though we need those for other reasons other than what I'm suggesting. It's just that the reform that I am calling for would not actually ultimately benefit my own agenda. So what I want is not ultimately what's going to happen. And because I recognize that so concretely, I don't think that's what my tweet is calling for. It's just that I am launching a critique, not the fact we're all talking about Demon Slayer, that we're talking about Demon Slayer in the same way, I guess, is probably the most concrete way I can put it.
Oh, like it's amazing for X, Y, and Z, and like and the X, Y, and Z is like the same as somebody else's ABC.
Or even the fact that we're talking about it being amazing. I think over and over, and like I think I understand. Like it's not necessarily the topic itself, but it's just the repetitive dialogue surrounding it. Oh, this episode was great, phenomenal, great animation, blah blah blah.
So
Yeah.
what I think you guys are trying to say is that I need to make a why I hate Demon Slayer video.
No, because actually, okay, I think that in any paradigm, even if an anime is extremely well received, I think a video that does the opposite and says it's extremely like bad, that will do equally as well, because I think polarizing themes on a popular topic will always do well regardless of general opinion on it. Because if you're invested in Tokyo Revengers, you're going to care why this popular video says that it is doing bad, right? Shout out to Ralphie. Go watch his video on Tokyo Revengers, like the latest arc. It's very well put together. But again, like even if the popular narrative is that Demon Slayer equals good, I think there is a large opportunity for Demon Slayer equals bad videos to do well, because it's just about what's polarizing. That's kind of what does, the most numbers. Just because, again, I don't care. Like, if you simply say, I think Demon Slayer is an okay anime, like, I don't give a fuck to watch your video then. Like, whatever. Like, it's the most okay opinion ever. But if you say Demon Slayer is the most dog shit, boring, repetitive, poorly animated anime of all time, I'm going to say, oh my god, wow. I have to figure out why he thinks that. Because that's just so counter to what I already think. Then there's actually incentive to watch the video. But if you're saying Demon Slayer's okay, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Fine, it's a whatever. Moving on. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know why I went off on this tangent, but I hope that illuminates something that we've said tonight.
I feel what you mean. And I want to wrap things up in like the next 10 minutes or so, just because we're approaching that 2.5 hour mark.
Yeah.
All right, so there's two things I want to talk about, and I want to leave the floor open to either of you to introduce any other topics. The first thing, hey Ronin.
Yeah.
Why the fuck didn't you tell me you watched Whiplash? It's been 2 weeks.
Bro,
Not a peep out of you.
I watch. Like, I'm supposed to tell you every movie I watch. What's going on?
So here's a little background for.
Kreams kind of sound like the obsessed girlfriend.
No, here's why I'm bringing it up. Here's why it's important. Okay, so episode 1 had the sequence where I referenced Whiplash in a totally organic way, dude. It was fucking seamless. And then I decided to keep it in. I was gonna cut it because I was like, nobody's gonna fucking get this like Whiplash reference. I'm insane, right? So I keep it in just because like it flowed nicely or whatever. And BR this whole time was like, oh yeah, I get what you're trying to say. It sounds like a cool movie. I might check it out. 2 fucking weeks go by. I see this guy on Twitter. He checked it out. Didn't say a fucking word. And now I'm here, just sad because I was like gassing this movie up, and I was like, oh shit, he watched it. I want to talk with him about it. And I assumed the feeling was mutual.
Bro, it's a good. Listen. It's a good movie. It's basically a story about how I'm not working hard enough.
Oh
so
my
I
god,
love it. There
dude,
we go.
that is what. You know, everybody in your replies is like, that's the wrong lesson, dog.
Bro, that's literally the takeaway from the movie.
He broke up with his girlfriend to become a better drummer, you know? His whole life basically fell apart to appease Fletcher.
But at the end of the movie, who was the good drummer?
We don't... he appeased Fletcher. The movie ended.
That solo went hard.
Ended with him literally staring at Fletcher, not the audience behind him, who he was technically performing for. Fucking Fletcher. Are you good?
Yeah, like he clearly valued his whole career as a drummer around Fletcher's approval. So the fact that Fletcher is now smiling at him at this final performance, despite the fact Fletcher set up to fuck him over.
Oh, you watched it?
Is obvious. Dude, I love Whiplash. One of my favorite movies of all time.
Let's fucking get it, dude. Whiplash.
All I have to say is like the fact he literally structured his whole life as a drummer around Fletcher's approval, and is finally getting it at the end scene. Like implicitly, of course, he's like only subtly smiling. He's not like, giving like the biggest dandy, oh my god, you're such a good drummer.
Bro, he threw a chair at him, man. And like he kicked him off the drums.
Here's the thing.
Go on.
Well, to be fair, I've also kicked you off the mic and said mean things to you, but like that doesn't like change the fact that, the relationship still exists otherwise.
It's kind of a dick move though on Fletcher's part, because he broke him down to a fine point.
Yeah. And here's the thing, I understand, like, I feel like I get what the movie is trying to say, like, going over, like, the obsessions of, like, being great, blah, 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 blah. But, like, requiring an obsession to reach an absurdly high goal is something that I've not only seen in other media before, but I already I already believe to be true. So it's not like, I don't know what other message I should take from it. Like, because he reached... obviously we don't see the end result, but he essentially reached his goal of, like, Fletcher was the symbolic thing of, like, if I have his approval, I am good, right? Because of his quality as like a conductor. And he got that approval at the end by literally the obsession that he developed for drumming. To me, all that reinforces is like a borderline insane obsession with your craft will lead to the improvement of that craft, which is something I think is true. Whether or not you think that's necessarily healthy for other aspects of your life is whatever, but I do think that the general message is, you want to be the best, be a little fucking insane.
So who's your Fletcher? Like the YouTube algorithm, the audience? Like
I don't have a Fletcher outside of myself. Like maybe old me when I uploaded daily, I guess. That's the problem, that I don't have a Fletcher right now. So that's like the issue.
Yeah, Ronin wants somebody to throw a chair at him, confirmed.
Yes, actually. If someone would throw a chair at me every time I wasn't working on a script, recording, or editing, I'd grow to hate them because it, be hurting me. But like, I'd appreciate it. If anybody would, I'll pay you like $1 an hour to throw chairs at me because I'm broke, so I can't really do much more than that.
Any closing thoughts on the Whiplash thing, aside from Ronin is a little feelings herder, and I cried myself to sleep that night?
Good movie.
I'm with it.
I simply enjoyed it. I didn't look too deep into it, honestly, so I don't really have too much else to say on it.
All right, last topic before we end this thing off. Doofy, what did you think of JJK?
It's great.
That's it.
What else do you want me to say? Like, it's
what you liked about it, who your favorite characters are, shit like that.
Nanami is my favorite character by far.
Really?
I think he's dope as fuck.
Okay.
It's not so much about like development and presence, more so like characterization. I just feel like they nail it from the beginning. I mean, his whole ability, like overclock, overtime, whatever. That shit's just badass. Like when he's like, I'm over my hours now, and like he pulls down his tie, and he's like, it's fucking like you can see like the cursed energy coming out of him, and he's like, oh, okay, motherfucker, for real now. And then he fought like Mahito like in the anime, and like that was like probably my favorite fight from the whole anime. But then his final few fights in the manga were also like spectacular. I love his abilities. I love him as a character. It's not so much an issue of development as it is of characterization, and I think he nails it. Like visually, everything he is supports who he acts as, and I think that kind of unity between visual and like conceptual design is something that's much more meritable than a mere development over the course of like 20 chapters. So I think he is a lot better than a lot of people make him out to be. Because, yeah, sure, whatever. He doesn't have this grand sweeping development that a lot of people enjoy. And that's, neither here nor there. But the fact remains, like, they nailed his characterization from chapter 1 of his introduction, both visually and conceptually, that remained consistent throughout. And I think the way it manifests in fights was, again, to answer, like, Ronin's most recent tweet, what's the most underrated JJK fights? It's Nanami, because every fight he has is, like, peak of the series. So, I mean, yeah, I'm in love with the characters, I'm in love with the story, and Nanami, I think, is the peak of both of those things for me.
Yeah, technically, Nanami hasn't won a single fight.
I don't care about winning, though. That comes into like a power scaling thing.
He bullied Haruta.
No, because Sukuna was the one that killed him. Do you remember Haruta's...
He beat him, but I don't think... But killing somebody doesn't mean you didn't win the fight. I've won fights where I didn't kill my opponent.
I know, but like, they were there on more or less an extermination mission.
All that aside, though, I think that the art in JJK is phenomenal. Not because Gege's attention to detail. I think that's actually kind of lacking, but like his attention to like movement and motion.
Yes.
The ability to capture like movement in a manga is very difficult, and the fact that he has captured it so adequately is very remarkable to me. That's a kind of virtue of the manga. But I will say that there are just these whole periods where like the manga feels nothing more than an average battle show, and coupled with the fact that like visually it's underwhelming, it became difficult. So everything before, I think, Gojo's past is kind of like okay to me. There are moments that I think are like, exceptional, like Todo Itadori versus
Hanami.
Yeah. That was like a high for me, but like other than that, everything before Gojo's past, it's just like okay. But like, Shibuya, one of my favorite arcs in all manga. So let that say what it will.
It's pretty...
Itadori's extermination could have been a lot better. Unfortunately, what's that guy's name, by the way, from JJK Zero? Yeah, Utah like was introduced cold as fuck. I was excited
Yes.
for him to like try and come down and just kill Itadori, and he's like, "Haha, I'm actually a former student of Gojo, also, and I'm here to protect you." I'm like, "Oh my god, fuck you! I wish you were trying to kill Itadori, and there was something more substantial in that
Nah,
conflict."
bro. If he was trying to kill Yuji, like at that point, he would have killed him.
I know, but like you could have wrote him otherwise. You know what I mean? Like you could have also had a more like prolonged conflict if you wanted to. If you wrote the character that way. But you know, it ultimately was disappointing, despite the fact that I think Yuta is a pretty cool character. Not a better, excuse me, not a better protagonist, but a pretty cool character. And I guess my final
Have you
comment
read
about
Volume 0?
no, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Are you gonna watch the movie?
I'll do both. I'll read the manga fairly soon, to be honest, and I'll watch the movie when it drops. Also,
No.
but like right now in Culling Game, like maybe I'm just one of those 10% motherfuckers that don't get it. But like I just don't get it. Like I feel like it could be told more effectively.
Is it the rules that are confusing? Because like that's what confused
No,
me,
the rules
right?
are fine.
Or like,
the rules are like whatever.
or is it like what the
It's
calling
like-
game is? Like literally what the calling game is.
Yeah, like in the sense of like what it hopes to achieve overall is kind of like not so clear to me.
Oh yeah,
In the sense of like what exactly it's contributing to
Okay.
JJK in general
see,
is not obvious to me.
that took me a while to like figure out too. Like it wasn't until I did like a bunch of rereads that it was like, oh, that's what it is. Do you want us to tell you?
Yep, please, anything to enjoy this great series.
Yo, I'm gonna let Broken Ronin do it. He's been on an explained kick recently. I want to pass that torch off to him.
I'm sure. The simplest way to put what the Culling game, like, so are you asking like why do they exist? Like, what is it supposed to further narratively, basically? Is that okay? So if that's the question. Basically, all this is like it's Kenjaku's. This is like the Culling games are the method in order for Kenjaku to evolve in the way that he wants to. So like the way I kind of rationalize it is similar to how like Megumi had his little mini evolution where he unlocked his domain and had to realize like, okay, gotta stop fucking be willing to sacrifice and kill myself every time I'm having a little bit of trouble, right? The Culling games are for Kenjaku this step to evolve and merge with Tengen and basically become this like supreme being above everything else. So it's the specifics of like, okay, how is that going to happen are still being unfolded still like as we speak, because Kenjaku basically we got a little bit of a hint of what Kenjaku's doing again this recent chapter, and basically it's just a process in the evolution of his like character and power. I think a lot of it is a little bit ambiguous because we don't know what Kenjaku, like, we know he wants to evolve and merge with Tengen, which is why he has Geto's body and things like that. But like why he desires this, like what is the root I guess I don't know why I can't think of words right now. What is like the root of what he wants this for? Like why does he desire to evolve in this sense, right? Because basically the Culling games are chaotic. Chaos is what is able to derive this sort of like evolution for him. And that's basically what it is, right? I don't know if that makes it any better for you or not. Honestly, I doubt it if it didn't do it for you initially.
Yeah.
So here's how I think of it, because he takes a lot of inspiration from Aizen.
Yeah.
I would say the Culling games are for Kenjaku what Aizen cultivating Ichigo was for him. So it is a large series of I guess extremely charged like actions of like Yuji going through the Culling games, Megumi, all that stuff, all of these characters going through their individual growth, all in order to further their own personal motives of development. That's the best way I could put it. That it plays a similar role for Kenjaku as Ichigo did for Aizen, of like Aizen cultivating Ichigo, setting him up versus like Ukiyo and Grimmjow and things like that.
Yeah, damn. I feel like I had a point earlier to make, but I kind of forgot it when you just kind of gave that final bit. I guess my only like issue now is that like even if like conceptually we can rationalize why this might not be rational for like Kenjaku and like his ultimate development, blah blah blah, it just feels like each chapter has lost sight of that, and that it's kind of going off in its own direction, and in a direction that I don't necessarily think contributes to something greater. like there are some amazing moments in the most recent JJK chapters. Don't get me wrong, but I just am not so committed to the fact that it might be going towards something more concrete. Whereas, with Shibuya, I feel like it was all tending towards a single narrative, whether or not we knew that or not. And again, it could just be a function of the fact that I don't understand, and nor should we at all understand how this is all coming together, because that'll be like the ultimate plot twist for like Gege or whatever. But as it exists right now, I just feel like it's lost the plot, and I don't know. I feel like, all that aside, I feel like Kenjaku just doesn't have the same presence as I want out of like this kind of massive villain. Like, yeah, sure, you sealed Gojo, and that's really cool or whatever, but Aizen's presence was much more menacing and always known at every step in the plot. And I don't even think his execution was particularly amazing, but to not even be able to imitate that at the most basic level, to me, is a fundamental failure of JJK. And that's why I think Culling Game is not doing it for me ultimately right now. And I guess the whole thing of like the thread that unifies everything is the fact that, Culling Game is chaotic, much like Kenjaku. Like, okay, like at the most basic conceptual level, at that level of abstraction, I can kind of grant you that commonality. But Gege himself has said that I don't think of themes when I write this shit. I got that from you, Ronin. But
yeah,
and like, by the way, I don't think that what he thinks is right is what is objectively right. But at the same time,
I agree.
Yeah, at the same time, as a viewer, it just feels lost. It doesn't feel unified and cohesive. Now, there might be a single moment 20 chapters later that reverses that, and I will be eating my words. But for the time being, that's just not the case. And that's simply all I have to copy. That's all I have to comment on, I guess.
This isn't to convince you, but just more of like my perspective on it. Because I feel like in these types of like discussions, what you feel is what you feel, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to change that. So I'm not trying to convince you. And I think what you're saying is like a valid thing. Mine is more of like a whatever. I feel like.
But can I just interject really quickly?
Sure.
JJK is one of like those rare series that I'm cheering for all the time because I want it to be good, because I know how good it can be. And so any opportunity to hear how good it could be from, even your most charitable explication, like, I am very willing to hear that out. So, just you don't have to apologize for that. Like, you don't even have to preface it with saying, I'm not trying to convince you, because like I am listening to that, trying to believe you just to have more enjoyment. So ultimately, please go the fuck off so I can enjoy this series, because right now Culling Game is not doing it for me, and I want somebody to change my mind because I want to love this series.
So for me, here's the way I look at it, right? Shibuya post like chapter 90 or something, when Gojo gets sealed, like, I feel like, okay, I think this is, the Culling Games are in a similar place to where Shibuya was right about when Yuji faced off with Choso. To me, at least, unless you have like this, this awareness of the series that can only be granted via hindsight, I personally felt like them trying to unseal Gojo was obviously that is their goal, right? That is what we know to be the case, similar to how we know Kenjaku is like trying to evolve, right? However, it did not feel like that. It felt like they were simply fighting for their lives, right? And I guess, to use your terminology, it seems like the plot was lost. Like, because the point of Shibuya is to, for the villain side, get rid of Gojo, and the point for the protagonist is to unseal him, right? However, post like chapter 105, which is where the Choso fight reached its conclusion, I was not thinking about Gojo getting unsealed ever until now.
Well,
obviously,
to be fair,
retrospectively, I get that.
To be fair, isn't it like you're not supposed to be thinking of Gojo getting sealed, because the whole driving force of the story is that he did get sealed, and they have to adapt, basically.
Yeah. That plays to my point, actually. So the like, it wasn't. This isn't a criticism of Shibuya, right? In fact, it's I think a thing I can say only because I've seen it and I know how it plays out, right? I was not thinking about Gojo being unsealed, even though you could argue that is the purpose. When Gojo was sealed, that is the purpose of the arc, right? At least from our understanding at that current point in time. From Choso to the end of Shibuya, where Kenjaku was like, "See y'all later, peace out. I'm bringing back dead sorcerers that are gonna fold y'all," right? That is like, I was like, okay, wow, what the fuck? Like, I forgot Gojo. Like, everybody was fighting for their lives. Megumi's fighting for his life. Maki's fighting for hers. Nanami's fighting for his. Messed up on that. Yuji's fighting for his. Gets bullied. Right? All these different things are happening that makes me forget Gojo's character. But it all ties together into this nice, neat little bow during the conclusion, right? This is all building to this bigger reveal. Personally, as someone who, I'm going to be honest, is just a fanboy for JJK.
Hell yeah.
I have a lot of trust in Akutami because to me he's done this quite a bit. Whenever I read an arc or I read or decide to reread like a certain portion of Jujutsu Kaisen, I gain a newfound respect of it because I feel like he writes as someone that chapter by chapter is very sporadic and honestly seems like it's like all over the place, but typically has this more overarching structure or idea to it. Like Naoya's character, for example. Initially, to me, he was just a guy implemented into the story. But when you get to the end of the Zenin clan arc, I feel like he's supposed to be a representative of all the hatred, misogyny, all the blah 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 stuff the clan represented, and Maki killing him or getting rid of him is a sign of her kind of eviscerating the clan in its most like on the nose sense. So personally, right, I feel like I'm okay with getting lost in the specific character to character moments. I actually relish in that. I want to see Yuta go off and do his own thing. I want to see Maki go off and do her own thing. I want to see Megumi. I want to see Yuji. And I want to see them get lost in the Culling games. I want to see them play to Kenjaku's tune, right? Until we reach this overarching idea. For me personally, I'm perfectly content with these things, with theorizing, with trying to piece the puzzle together myself through like little implicit details rather than it be explicit right now. And that's why because I don't disagree that the Culling games are very scattered, but I feel like that's the intention, and you can look at it in, this might be an instance of me ascribing like value or substance to something where there isn't any, right? But I think, for example, Megumi and Yuji being scattered quite literally across Japan is, it doesn't have to be symbolic of it, but to me, it's somewhat representative of this scatterbrained nature, very similar to Shibuya, right? Everybody is separated, and they're all getting fucked up individually, and I like that because it gives me a lot of character moments for them. And when it does, well, I'm assuming when it does tie into this bigger overarching narrative, and Kenjaku is made to be an even greater villain than he is, I'm going to enjoy it even more. I think it's just a difference of, I guess I'm rather trusting Akutami to tie it together later because he's done it for me in the past. But I don't disagree that the Culling games are chaotic as they are right now. If that, I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean,
it makes a lot of
technically
sense.
they've barely started when you think about it from like the grand scheme of things, because the Hakari arc wasn't really the Culling games yet. It was the Hakari arc, right? So the Culling games, for me at least, didn't start until like all of them were actually at the front of like the gate and entering the Culling games. So when you think about it like that, it was only like 4 or 5 chapters ago. And for such a massive arc,
that's true.
Yeah, for such a massive arc, it's just the beginning.
Okay, I mean, in that sense, that's fair. I still think that actually, I mean, Ronin, I think you've illuminated this issue a lot for me because you're right. Like Shibuya wasn't even consistent to its initial theme, nor do I think that kind of consistency with regards to a specific thing is what makes an arc good. I feel like its ability to kind of dismantle from that, do other meaningful things, and then come together in the end. And so obviously Culling Game has a lot of opportunities to do exactly that by very explicitly dispersing like Megumi from like Itadori and just keeping them apart. Again, keeping these different opportunities for these breakthrough moments for each of them, and then being able to bring them together at the very end, probably with like Gojo like being released or something like that. I don't know, some shit like that. I think you're right. Again, by prefacing that with like a kind of trust of the author, which I feel like I don't bring inherently, I should, especially in the case of JJK, which has on several occasions already proven that Gege will kind of deliver on certain themes to just make it the most enjoyable experience possible. So I feel like I should have some confidence, and I feel like you're justified in having that in your interpretation. But I think you raise a good point. As scattered as I think it is, there's still the possibility that it can come together in a very meaningful way to just blow my mind. I think maybe, if anything, my only issue is that, unlike Shibuya, where I feel the individual arcs that kind of split off from the main theme, I feel like those were still like pretty damn good on their own. Whereas in Culling games so far, there's just a lot of moments that they could be more satisfactory. Perhaps is my main issue. Like it could just be more.
Yeah, so that was episode 4? Ronin?
Episode 4 of the Nuts podcast. No, of the Honored One podcast. Thank you guys for joining us for this extensively long podcast.
Yes.
I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and make sure to go subscribe to all of our channels as we have all good content, Jujutsu Kaisen content, philosophical anime content, and honestly a plethora of content. Hunter x Hunter, Jujutsu Kaisen, Bleach especially on Kreams channel coming out soon. So make sure to go check that out.
Broken Ronin's channel too. Don't sell yourself short.
As well, of course.
Check out Doofy's channel. Thanks for coming on, man. It was a really fun conversation. Can't wait to have you on again.
Probably.
I mean, we're doing that.
Great response.
I know we're doing that Bleach tier list, so you gotta.
Yeah.
I mean,
all I'm saying is, if you guys are desperate for a third host, you know who to fucking mention.
Well, we're not that desperate just yet. See you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.